Thank you, everybody. This is my first introduction to the CIO group here, and appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to sharing a little bit about future of IT and tell you a little bit about Wells Fargo and how we are approaching different aspects. What I thought I'd do today is just a real brief personal background, talk about some trends in the financial services industry. I like to communicate a lot through headlines, and I'm going to share some headlines that I think are very indicative of what many of us are all dealing with every single day. Talk a little bit about Wells Fargo today, then we'll talk about trends, ways that I think all of us can continue to advance the transformation, and then I'll do a quick summary. Just real briefly, 60 years young. I have the notable exception of marrying my kindergarten sweetheart. My wife Nancy and I literally go back to kindergarten together. Got a bachelor's degree in psychology and MBA from University of Chicago, and I started in financial services right out of graduate school. So I've been in financial services for 36 years. And you can see some of the jobs at the bottom. What's probably most notable is I've only been in IT for 3 years. And there was a very conscious decision that our CEO, John Stumpf, made that he wanted a business person to go into the CIO role. And I'm just curious, how many of you, 75% or more of your career has been in the technical space? Just a show of hands. Okay, probably about 2/3. And the other 75%, would that be in business, primarily business? Okay, great, good to know. So what's trending in the industry? The headlines become very relevant, and they're particularly relevant for larger financial institutions, but I think it plays for all of them. You start to look at the penalties that are occurring for institutions that might have had anti-money laundering BSA, the advent of the CFPB, and the implications that starts to have for customer interactions, where the world is really moving from to fiduciary responsibility almost for a financial institution relative to its customers. Innovation's a really big topic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but clearly lots of people are looking to non-traditional financial service providers, feeling as though they're the ones that are really innovating. We'll talk a little bit about how Wells Fargo is trying to deal with that. Obviously, cyber. Just in the 3 years that I've been in the role, I just cannot believe how much that's evolved, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But clearly, the consequences of a cyber breach, obviously, you saw what happened at Target, the reputation risk that goes along with that, and literally every single day there is somebody else that it's coming out that there was a major data breach. And so I'm assuming all of you are making very heavy investments in cybersecurity. And the economy is certainly a challenge for any financial institution. Most of us are very flush with deposits, and loan demand is a little bit weak. That starts to put a lot of pressure on expenses, and a lot of times IT is a very large component piece of the expenses, and so they start to look for us around what are you doing to try to continue to simplify your environment and get more efficient. A little bit about Wells Fargo today. It's an amazing institution. We are over 90 national businesses. We actually operate in 35 countries, and a lot of people don't know that about Wells Fargo because most of our international presence tends to be more in the commercial and wholesale space. We don't have a retail presence per se in a lot of any foreign countries. But what we really have that we're very excited about is a distribution advantage. We've got over 9,000 stores. We call them stores because we think of ourselves as a retailer as opposed to offices. And we've got a store or an ATM within 2 miles of 50% of the population in the United States. And the acquisition of Wells Fargo with Wachovia was a huge boon for us that truly gave us that coast-to-coast distribution. Our group is called Technology and Operations Group, and we really are the lifeblood of everything that gets done in the organization. And we enable our 70 million customers to interact with us more than 12 billion times a year. And that's across all different channels that we're responsible for trying to manage. And really the secret sauce, I think, for Wells Fargo is we have this slogan called, how do we out-national the locals and out-local the nationals? which is really all about bringing national capabilities and literally the ability to do just about any product or service, but we want that delivered with that you-know-me kind of customer experience that a traditional smaller bank or a credit union or somebody like that might be able to provide. And so we spend a lot of time trying to have local decision-making, local capabilities, and that real good touch in the community, but very much with unbelievable national capabilities. Something that is really very interesting for us right now is we are one of 29 banks that are globally systemically important financial institutions, a G-SIFI. And this all came out of TARP and when the banks got bailed out. And there are major implications of that are starting with the G-SIFIs, but I would tell you, I believe that's going to continue to roll down to different size institutions as well. You know, certainly any institution over $50 billion in assets. So the expectations that the regulators have around capital management, liquidity, as a G-SIFI, we have to have a resolution, a living will that basically says, should we ever get in trouble, this is how you would dissolve us. We have to go through capital planning submissions in order to be able to give capital back or do share buybacks with our shareholders. So very, very high expectations, one of which is this notion of heightened expectations. And heightened expectations from the regulators start to get at things like business continuity, third-party vendor management, strong operational risk management, strong audit practices. So the bar around everything that it really takes to operate as a financial institution, if you're in this G-SIFI classification, is just that much higher, which requires a significant amount of investment that we need to continue to make. Very large employer. We've got 270,000 team members that work for Wells Fargo. We are the largest in the world in terms of market capitalization, which is something we're extremely proud of. And we're the largest originator and servicer of mortgages. The distribution advantage, which drives a tremendous amount of our checking growth, is supplemented by being such a large mortgage originator. And generally speaking, people look to their mortgage company or their checking account holder as their main bank. So it's a tremendous opportunity for us to then go and cross-sell the rest of the Wells Fargo products and services. One of the most exciting things that we're working on right now is something called our One Wells Fargo. And it's fascinating. If you ever get a customer complaint, the first thing a customer says is, I've been a Wells Fargo customer for 14 years, and I've got this product and that product and this product with you. And so one of the things we're trying to do is to up our capabilities to truly give a customer that One Wells Fargo experience, truly trying to show them that we know them at every moment and every interaction, by trying to make it clear and easy, by never asking them for information that we should already have about them, always giving the right guidance and solutions, trying to not be in a product pushing role, but to go through a customer needs-based assessment, try to identify what customers need, and then offer them the appropriate solution. And most importantly, in every single interaction, how can we have customers feel as though we value them? And so this is a really big effort in the organization, and we've started to organize it around what we call customer moments. And we've started to think about our interactions with our customers into everyday moments, which would be typically cashing a check, going to the ATM, your normal transaction kind of capabilities. Moments of truth, which would be lower frequency transaction, but often much more emotional. Somebody loses their debit card. Somebody is got married or divorced and is changing their name. Somebody is, there was a death in the family. Those would be kind of moments of truth with a customer. And then signature moments are really all about how can we be known as the provider in a couple of select areas. And so there's a tremendous amount of work. Right now we probably have about 80 different initiatives where the organization is marshaling around this concept of customer moments with a very strong message to our team members around we want them to own the moment. So how can you get 270,000 team members feeling as though they are directly responsible for what that customer experience is? And it's often tricky when you're not customer facing. So in our technology group, we will spend a lot of time around how the work that you're doing today enables a team member to be able to provide differentiated service, or enables a customer to self-serve in a more satisfactory manner. Key enablers to One Wells Fargo is really all about efficient processes, as much as we can do that can be flow through. One of our challenges, it's a blessing and a curse in many ways, is our cross-sell is well over 6 products per household, per retail household. And in the business banking side, it's over 8 products. And if you get into wealth management, it's over 12 products. That is phenomenal, but it also adds tremendous complexity to the customer relationship. And so the more we can ensure that we are leveraging information so that whoever is interacting with that customer, they are able to recognize the full value of the relationship and the history with that customer, that's the secret that we're trying to bring together around this One Wells Fargo. We want to be able to show customers that we know them. Multi-channel is very, very big. What we typically have found is people are rarely single-channel users. And as much as mobile banking is growing astronomically, it's not exclusive. So they're still using ATMs. They're still occasionally calling the phone center. They're still going into the stores. They're still online. So really trying to provide a multi-channel experience with our customers is a major focus. And then absolutely in this environment, how can we provide similar authentication, authorization experiences so that customers always feel as though their information is safe. One of our really big projects right now in this space that we're excited about is something called Know Me, K-N-O-W, Know Me, Do You Know Me? And we've been working with a number of strategic partners, trying to take all of the information that we know about a customer and trying to bring that into an experience that our bankers and our customer contact people can truly know that customer. So that's understanding their products, it's understanding the services they have with us, it's understanding their transaction history. If they have a mortgage with us, do we know the information that was on the mortgage application? If they went through what we call a customer needs-based assessment, which is what our bankers put people through, you have all sorts of information that you've collected there. How do we take information from service interruptions, perhaps a bad experience with a customer, and bring all of that together into an opportunity that we can truly enhance that customer's experience. So that's a big part of One Wells Fargo is some proof of concepts around this notion of Know Me. So let's talk a little bit about technology trends and transformations. No bolts of lightning here. I think everybody knows the major trends that are going on. Mobile, new innovation, cloud we'll talk a little bit about. Social media has a huge impact on what's going on in the organization. Information security, absolutely top of mind. And then data and insights. So what I'll share with you is more how we're thinking about it. And hopefully there's some time at the end for some dialogue. I'd love to hear how many of you are thinking about this as well. Mobile, the pace of adoption is mind-blowing to me. And things getting to mass scale. It'll be fascinating tomorrow as Apple introduces some of their new capabilities and what's going to be in that. Getting into wearables now at a much greater pace. But the projections are in 2014 there'll be more than 7 billion mobile devices out there. Far more than the world's population. In the United States alone, almost over 280 million people are users of mobile in the United States. For us in Wells Fargo, it's our fastest growing customer contact channel. We're seeing explosive growth in use. We've got now over 13 million customers that are doing mobile banking with us. It's been a 50% jump overall in utilization. And yet what's fascinating is if you looked at where are all the sales coming from, stores are still king. So sometimes people talk about the demise of the physical distribution and people are cutting distribution, feeling as though people have moved to alternative measures. They have in many ways, but multi-channel still is critical. And as we think about products and services, we're always thinking about how is this going to get incorporated across multiple channels. So we still see the stores as the dominant sales channel for the organization. What's a little bit different now is people aren't coming in necessarily as often. And so it becomes a question of how do we create opportunities for somebody to decide to come in. And there's some new capabilities like make an appointment where we will offer products and services and say, are you interested? We can make an appointment for you. Just click here and you can go right in and make an appointment. We're applying capabilities to interactions. So one of the fabulous things about mobile is it's always on. You always know where people are, and you can really start to take advantage of the fact that the relevancy of the offers based on their specific, unique circumstances at the time. And so there's also great measures where we can start to take a look at fraud prevention, understanding people's usage pattern. If the card's being used in a certain location and the phone is somewhere else, gee, that's a little unusual. What do you want to try to do with that sort of information? So the fact that it is so ubiquitous among consumers, they always have it with them, the ability to provide real-time offers, the ability to provide alerts. We've really stepped up our game around alerting customers of different types of circumstances, that it really starts to have your everyday financial transactions are just totally integrated into the work that you do every single day. And it's really a fascinating opportunity. And the proliferation of connected devices to be able to know even more about customers and their habits, the ability to take this information from a big data perspective and drive some additional insights and capabilities is also very exciting. Some of the things that we've done recently around enabling transactions, and many of you might have the same capability, remote deposit capture. It used to be everybody always had to come into the store. Well, now you've got a phone, you've got a camera, take a picture of the check. They don't have to come in anymore. So an example of where traffic might start to slow down because you're starting to put more and more transactions into a digitized format. We've got doing a lot around electronic wallets, clearly one of the big wave of activities that's coming along. NFC capabilities, both on cards and also in mobile phones. Things like enrollment in bill pay is another new capability that we're introducing in the mobile space. I mentioned alerts is a really big thing, constantly looking for ways that people can understand what's happening real time with their financial situation. So let's talk a little bit about innovation. It is a major focus for Wells Fargo, and one of the things that we are also very, very focused on is ensuring that innovation is extremely purposeful and is trying to satisfy something that one of our businesses are trying to accomplish. So I mentioned we've got 90 different businesses. We have an organizational structure within the technology and operations where we have CIOs that are aligned to those different businesses. And we really focus a lot on you need to learn the drivers of those businesses. You need to understand how they make money. You need to understand how their customers are using technology and really trying to earn a seat at the table to be able to say, here's how technology and operations can be a competitive advantage through innovation for your customers. The other big challenge, though, for us is we want to try to develop once and deploy multiple times. And traditionally, the way system development work was done is the business that had the money got to make the call, and they drove the development of the program. Well, now we're going through a pretty big change in Wells Fargo where we used to have this notion of run it like you own it, where the it was you, the business. Well, now we're trying to say run it like you own it, where it is the enterprise. So how can we get people to do more centers of excellence, sharing of capabilities, and leveraging of capabilities across all of the different groups that make up those 90 separate businesses. Fascinating to talk to millennials and to get their perspective on where do they think innovation is going to come from. And boy, you read some of this and it's like we are in real trouble as financial institutions because everybody really believes the key disruptors. And there's a lot of truth to this. It's the Googles, it's the Apples and many others that are getting into the payment space that we clearly have to be concerned with. So one of the things, we've done a couple of things that I think is really helping us deal with this. We recently formed a group called the Technology Industry Partnership, and Vas Kadali, raise your hand, Vas. Vas is the leader of that group, and we really are partnering up with our investment banking IT practice and spending a lot more time with VCs and with newly emerging companies to start to identify companies that we think we can work with and start to bring their new capabilities into the organization. We just announced a group called the Technology Accelerator, where Wells Fargo is now making investments between $50,000 and $500,000 in early stage companies, really not with the intent that we're going to make a ton of money. It's really more to give them partnering around business capabilities, understanding what does it take to go to enterprise, with the hope that they will become a product or service that we could potentially start to offer in the future. And we also just recently launched something called the Enterprise Patent Office. And if you're not spending a lot of time thinking about intellectual property and patents, I would really encourage you to do so. I mean, it's a very evolving world out there. So we're spending a lot more time around ideation sessions within our group or doing deep dives and not thinking so much about what's going to happen in a year or two, but trying to get people together that can really help us envision of what's coming in the next 5 or 10 years, and potentially trying to create some processes and getting some patents around those types of ideas overall. When we get into innovation, a lot of different philosophies that are applied across the organization cast a very wide net. We really believe very strongly that you need to place a lot of bets and do a lot of proof of concepts. So we've definitely expanded our R&D and our lab environment in the organization overall. Big focus on testing pilots, and very distinct differences between on the network and off the network. And so what you're required to do when you start to get on the network, and you can start to have information security, but you can do an awful lot off the network to try to establish whether something looks like it's got legs, and then move that up the scale overall. And then the deployment is a really big deal. And again, I go back to the multi-channel integration that our customers are expecting. Really important in the overall scheme of things that we want to be able to let customers start in one channel and perhaps finish in another, but not to have to go through and tell a story again or to in any way redo information. And we really see that a lot. Somebody might start online, and then they're going to pick up the phone and call the phone bank. Or they're going to be in their mobile channel, they're going to do some research, and then they're going to go home and get online. And so trying to have this integrated infrastructure where we can understand the transaction, where they left off, and how we can pick up from where they left off is very, very challenging, because in many cases these technologies aren't unified. And so they all grew up under their own systems of record and their own core capabilities. Trying to link those together is a lot of where we're spending our time and efforts overall. And we've done a lot of things like we have a new capability called Click to Talk. So you're in the middle of a mobile transaction using your browser. You see something you want to talk to a phone banker, you can click to talk. That will take you right into our phone centers. You don't have to re-authenticate because you've already authenticated through your mobile device. Things like make an appointment. I mentioned alerts. We just continue to look for more and more ways that we can bring innovation to our customers. Cloud computing. This is a tough one for me. I struggle a lot with cloud, primarily from the information security perspective. But clearly, if you're posting photos, if you're using Gmail, I mean, cloud is definitely here to stay, and it is rapidly changing the way business is being done. And it's really one of probably the most disruptive activities that are occurring, I think, in technology in a long time. So if you think about the history of technology, it was essentially all mainframe, and then it started to move to client server, and you got into a lot of distributed workstation, and now we're starting to move into cloud. What's fascinating to me about cloud is many of the advantages that a large institution used to have in terms of buying power and unit costing and things like that have been completely negated by cloud. So a typical small business can start to get into the cloud and pick up capabilities that previously only a large national player might have had. So just like in many ways the internet made distribution irrelevant for many businesses, cloud, I think, has taken that whole notion of information technology and compute and neutralizing that in terms of scale of operations for many. So it's pretty exciting. Where Wells Fargo is right now is we have a lot of information and a lot of technology. And we really like the notions and the benefits of faster time to market, flexibility, the lower cost that comes from the concepts around cloud. So we're very, very focused on private cloud enablement. How can we bring all of those things with a managed release control capability, formalized stacks of capability and compute that our developers can use and are working very hard to really make this a reality in our organization. The other thing we're doing is if there truly is a killer application out there that our businesses need, that is something that we don't feel we can develop and bring to market in any reasonable period of time, then we will consider the benefits of software as a service. But if I go back to the heightened expectations of a GSIFI around vendor management, business continuity, information security, the complexity that we start to get into as we expand out the number of providers that we have just complicates things even more. And so there clearly is more comfort in knowing it's all resident on your network and within your data center. Yet the reality is the world is changing so fast, I think you have to be open to some of these, but you truly got to understand what information is being used, what's being stored, is it encrypted, is it personal confidential, all those different aspects that go along with it. But lots of time, attention, and thought is going on in this particular space. Social, explosive growth. It's just hard to really even fathom. Facebook at 1.3 billion monthly users, and the influence that it's having, and some of the multiples that you start to get on these companies are just mind-blowing. But these are just, you can just get some sense of the growth that's occurred across a number of these, probably more mainstream type of social networks. Wells, in the last couple of years, we weren't doing a lot with social, and we really, primarily from a defensive perspective, started to build out a couple of listening centers. So we now have centers in San Francisco and Charlotte. We have teams of team members that are responsible for monitoring the social networks and responding in a very personalized way. So if they see that somebody's having a problem, they will reach out to that individual. And obviously they can't do anything in the public space, but they will say, why don't you give me a call at this number, and we'll see if we can address your particular needs. So very, very excited about that. From going from defensive of trying to manage reputation risk and being on top of any sort of issue that might occur, we then have started to grow our fan base. We're doing much more on a proactive basis. Over 700 million social impressions, over 1 million social engagements with consumers have occurred. And we've really moved the needle on reputation. We track reputation very, very heavily and look at it in traditional media sources as well as social media. And it's been a great progress for us. And it's changing the way people do everything in terms of who they seek advice for, how they shop, the use of photos and sharing. It's an amazing environment, which we're pretty excited about from the information that we can obtain from those customers and hopefully provide more relevant offers to them that are location specific and sensitive to what they're particularly trying to do. Information security, just an amazing environment. You almost long for the days of the hacktivist that just wanted to get out there and deface your website. Now, make no bones about it, it is cyber warfare. It is nation-state cyber warfare that's going on. And we certainly, as Wells Fargo, feel the brunt of that, whether it be denial of service attacks. Obviously, JP Morgan Chase with their particular situation, Home Depot, major corporations. So you just cannot invest enough in cyber. And I really think this will be something for smaller institutions. I really feel for you, because having the wherewithal and the capabilities to invest the way many of the larger banks are doing. There's the old story about, how do you outrun a bear? Well, you don't have to run faster than the bear. You just have to run faster than the person that's with you. So, if we are better than some of the other large peers or some of the other medium-sized banks, cyber warfare starts to, in many cases, get in where can they most easily penetrate. And if you're talking about somebody that's trying to get into it for financial crimes purposes, for financial benefit, they think about the ROI on how they're going to spend their time and who they're going to go after and what kind of payback that they're going to be able to get on that. So some of the things that we've been doing, it's a little bit hard to read, but I think number one is you've got to know all of your assets. And assets are servers, databases, middleware, applications, firmware, the whole 9 yards. The configuration behind those all of us suffered from heartbleed not too long ago. And trying to identify where did that exist, not only in our own environments, but also all of our APS, ASPs, and also if you were dealing with cloud providers, to be able to get certification back saying, did you deal with heartbleed overall? So knowing your assets, having a really good handle on that, you constantly have to be monitoring your environment, identifying a potential problem early, taking risk mitigation actions against that, doing what you can to continue to think about how might you reduce the risk through segmentation of your network. What are you doing about privileged access in your organization? So I think the whole notion where everybody, I think, built up their information security predicated on, I've got a really solid external perimeter. They can't get in. The reality is they're probably in. And so what are you doing around managing information security within your own network? And do you have the right kind of measures and monitors to start to see unusual activity that might be occurring, either trying to leave your organization or moving across your organization overall? So really starting to have very strong discovery and operationalizing, a lot of opportunities around bringing in fraud detection and prevention in conjunction with cyber. We worry a lot about a DDoS attack might be the distraction, and there's something else that's going on that might be completely different than that. And so trying to bring together all the different intelligence that you have, and we built out what we call a cyber fusion center that is bringing together all of the risk management capabilities and external intelligence to try to always understand exactly who's doing what and why. And it's just an amazing space. Data, truly one of the biggest opportunities. We just 6 months ago hired our first chief data officer. And if you haven't started to think about that in your organization, I think it's a really big opportunity. It's probably the most exciting, proactive opportunity and growth opportunity for financial institutions overall. And this is kind of the transformation. Our chief data officer, a gentleman named Charles Thomas, and he talks about, you start out with basically information and you get a little bit of analytics around it, and maybe you get a little bit of insight. But the question is, what do you do with that data? How can you then take that and operationalize it into real-time interactions that will cause better decision-making and better offers for your customers? And then how do you really prove your value by doing a lot of proof of concepts, having test and learn, and showing the value of information appropriately used to be able to drive better business results. And it's an evolution for the organization, and it's a real challenge because we've got thousands of applications, many of which have their own data sources. And so trying to create this foundational data and then to be able to operationalize that is something that is really very exciting, but also very challenging for the organization. So just some wrap-up thoughts. So things that I think have helped us around transformation, and a lot of these are with our business partners. And one of the things that we found is you have to help your business partners understand the ecosystem and how you can help most. But clearly, trust, cost transparency is critical to an effective partnership. Breaking down the black box, helping people understand what are they using in the way of IT, and how can you work together. Benchmarking is great. I often find that people tend to always look internally and think, oh, we're doing pretty good. I'm best of breed internally. Well, if you don't start to look external, then you really don't know whether you're just the bright kid in the slow reading group internally. So you've got to look outside and start to think about how good and how high is up. Multi-year planning, so many things take multiple years, not only to introduce, but then to bring across the entire organization. So you've got to have a multi-year time horizon. We do regular business operating reviews. We sit down and review our projects. We review our financials. We make sure we're very calibrated with our partners. A culture of innovation. And innovation is great. The question always is, how are you going to pay for this? I know in Wells Fargo, we still have an awful lot of simplification of our environments that we can do. As much as we completed the Wells Fargo Wachovia integration, there still are multiple systems that effectively do the same thing. And so what can we do to simplify that and then turn around and reinvest those dollars in innovation overall? I mentioned intellectual property and patenting. And R&D efforts. I mentioned we have this technology accelerator. Something I just learned about, I did not know about this, and if you don't know about this, it's a real win. Research and experimentation tax credits. You can get a tax credit for your organization based on the work that many of your businesses and IT people are doing if you just keep decent records of what did you try, did it fail, what did you try again. So if you haven't looked into that, I would very seriously look into that. It's just money that's lying there for work that you're already doing today. Collaboration tools, I mentioned labs, proof of concepts, and then clearly partnerships are absolutely key. That's one of the things that VOS does a great job, is helps us figure out which firms we might want to partner with overall. So to summarize, fundamentals. If you're not safe, you're not available, you're not in business. And so continuing to always think about, you've got to do the fundamentals really well. I think transformation is enabled by partnering, learning your partner's lines of business, understanding their priorities, and then identifying how technology can be leveraged. The heightened expectations are just off the chart. And while right now it's for those 29 G-SIFI organizations, I can assure you it's going to roll down. So starting to understand what those are and getting a jump on that in your organizations, I think would be a really wise thing to do. Major disruption in the industry. I think the cloud providers and the entire economies of scale and taking some of the routine activities that you do today in your shop, taking that burden is a big disruptor. Data is huge. All of this work around One Wells Fargo is fundamentally about data and how can we maximize the value of the data. Needing to continue to invest in innovation. Hot talent. It's a really hot market out there in terms of information security and operational risk analysts, I think in particular, certainly among the largest financial institutions. And then we really believe in Wells Fargo that technology is absolutely an enabler to competitive differentiation and truly building customer engagement overall. And with that, I'll have to say thank you all.